Jim Bowden says the Twins should have interest in Jurickson Profar. He's got an interesting contract dollar figure, but he says it's a good fit. Should we believe him? Let's get Locked On Twins.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello again, and welcome back to Locked On Twins. I'm your host, Brandon Warren. You can unfollow me on the tweets at Brandon_WARNE. Thank you for making Locked On Twins your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. And, of course, as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, we're your team every day. Joined once again by Mr. Gregg Masterson. Follow him on the tweets at Gregg T. Masterson. 3 G's, 1 at the beginning and 2 further down. How we doing?
I got my Spotify Wrapped back, and it turns out that I didn't listen to 30 minutes of music on Spotify this year. So, I'm starting to question my life decisions.
And don't mind me if you're watching on the video. I'm just shutting the door to my office because my dog just came through. And if you're not watching on, I'm actually trying something new. I'm doing stand-up. So this is about the closest I'm going to get to giving you a stand-up routine. But we're going to see how it goes. If the takes improve, it's like Greg said off the air, because the blood flow is better. So we'll see if anything changes there. This episode today is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. Now, Greg, been a couple minutes since we've talked to you, but a few things going on in the major leagues. Before we get to the Profar thing, Mets signing Clay Holmes, 3-year deal. I think it was around $38 million, and he's going to be a starter. Now, I've discussed this with Dave Brown, and I don't know if we've discussed this on air. I know we've discussed it off air, but what's your take on teams signing relievers and turning them into pitchers? Because I feel like there's some risk there, but if he crashes out and burns and it's at the All-Star break, you turn him back to a reliever, 13 or whatever million per year for a pretty darn good reliever. Like, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, I do think that there's probably a little bit, you say, hit the All-Star break, and if he's not getting it done, just convert him back to a bullpen. I don't know if it's that easy. I'm a little bit hesitant on saying, like, you'll get anything from him out of the bullpen this year. Like, obviously we've seen guys ramp down at the end of years, whatever. But especially with kind of stretching yourself out and then immediately going back to where you were, I'm curious how that actually plays out in practice. Yeah. But in terms of like guys converting from relievers to starters, I don't know. I think I've become more and more open to it over time. Mm-hmm. I think that teams have better information right now, and so they're able to look at raw pitch metrics and figure out, okay, can we get this guy to play in the rotation? Like, obviously his stuff plays out of the bullpen, but how do we feel about him at least having 3 pitches? How do we feel he'll be if he loses 3 ticks on his fastball? All those different things. I'm open to it. I'm ready to hear any team out as they want to move a pitcher from the pen into the rotation, but it is a little scary, I think.
You do have to be ready to light that year on fire, which is easier for some teams to do than others. And I also think too, especially, Jordan Hicks switching over like he did, you've got a max effort guy, and it's just to throw that hard, you have to be max effort. I mean, there are some guys whose max effort is 92. My max effort in my best day was probably 72, but I wonder how capable they are of dialing that back. Now, with Holmes, and somebody else mentioned that he did have starts in the minors, but I don't know if that's recent enough to really have that governance in your brain of like, okay, I got to dial it back to this % of my max effort. But with Hicks, it's max effort, and then now it's stretching out to 4, 5, 6 innings. With Holmes, I don't know that the velocity thing is going to be as pronounced. But again, we've seen guys come out with adrenaline, throw 95, then drop to 92, then 89, and then they're hurt. I'm trying to think. Joe Musgrove, I think, of the Padres had a game like that, and his season was over, and that was that. That's one risk, too, that I don't think we're taking into consideration is spring training enough time to really get a feel for what your proper effort level is?
Yeah, I'm curious as to how much pre-work there goes into making that transition before you show up at spring training. Like if you know that you are going to need to get stretched out for potentially, let's say that, I mean, with Holmes, if he was relieving in the minors, what was that, 6-7 years ago?
Starting in the minors, you mean?
Yeah, starting. I'm not an expert on Clay Holmes's career path, but I would assume that was 6-7 years ago. I feel like there's stuff you have to do before you show up to spring training to make sure that you're actually going to be able to support that. I'm sure that it's less of a hurdle if you're talking about somebody who was starting 3 years ago, 2 years ago, whatever. Like obviously a lot of Twins fans are thinking about Griffin Jacks potentially in that role right now, where it's like, okay, he did start as recently as 2021. So, I would feel more comfortable with something like that than somebody who hasn't started in 6-7 years. But yeah, I'm curious as to what the off season looks like as you're trying to almost ramp up to the ramp up in spring training, and what your first 10 starts look like. Are you a 4-inning guy for the first 10 starts after that? Those types of things.
And you were pretty much right on. 2018 is the last year that he made more starts than any starts. He did transition a little bit to the bullpen when he came up to the big leagues that year. So he made 4 starts, 7 relief appearances, and then has not started a game since, not even as an opener. So I also wonder too, whose idea it is, if it's the team that comes to you and says, this is what we see, if it's a guy hitting free agency saying, I want to try something different, some combination of the two. I don't know. And I think part of what I see here too is he's a reliever with a 4.1 walks per 9 rate. I feel like the walk rate is supposed to go down when you become a reliever. So if it goes back up when you're a starter, there might not be a starter profile here, but bully to the Mets for trying it, I guess.
Yeah. And those are all things that kind of get baked into that decision. That I'm glad that I'm not the one who has to make the decision whether or not to green light a guy moving back to the rotation. I think that the decision to move somebody to the bullpen is often kind of made for the team. But for something like moving somebody from the bullpen back to the rotation, I'm glad I'm not making that decision.
Yeah, no question about it. Before we get into the Profar thing, I wanted to just note, if you send to me on whatever social media platform proof that Locked On Twins was in your year-end Spotify Wrapped, or if you show you've given us a 5-star review on Apple Pods and a subscription on YouTube, I will send you some of my I've sent out some care packages here. There's a Sunny Gray right here, but more than happy to get in the holiday spirit for people if they're pumping up the show. You got to gas it up, as some of my friends like to say. Yeah, let's just see here. Could you see the Twins doing this with an outside pitcher? Because, when I look at the Braves and them signing Ronaldo Lopez, I don't think of them as imminently further ahead than the Twins from a year ago. And for the Twins to be it'd be kind of hard to justify. You sign a guy and he's maybe your 5th starter, and we've already ad nauseum talked about how you don't really need to add to that area. Now, again, the payoff is with Ronaldo Lopez, he was terrific. He pitched like a number 2 starter for 20-odd starts. All of that is to say, I don't see a path for the Twins to try something like that.
No, and I mean, I don't know. I think I do see a path. I don't really like it, but it's we can't afford a starter starter. And so we pick out some reliever who we think could potentially get stretched back out. And as a reliever, all of their offers are for $7 million. And you're like, oh, okay, well, I'll pay $7 million for you and then try to stretch you out to be a starter or whatever. Yeah. I don't know. I do that on OOTP all the time, but that's not real life.
We, in my league, we used to be able to, we do a thing called Winter Ball. I play in the old 6.5. So it's like an engine from 2004. And so the guy that runs it's like Winter Ball. You get 10 points every off season, plus however many players on your team made the all-star team. So I'll get 13, 14 every year. And I would use them on endurance to pitchers who were just about starters and get them over that hump. And so you would track down really good relievers in free agency and pay them less, or in the draft in the 2nd round.
Yep.
That was my trick. So I know exactly where you're coming from.
Yeah. Well, but it's not real life.
No, it's not. It really isn't. Well, let's do this. Let's take our first pause. When we come back, Jurickson Profar, pros, cons, and all of that with Gregg Masterson. Are you rocking with Gametime yet? Because if you're not, you should be. Download that Gametime app. If you like going to live events like I do, whether it's a comedy show, theater, music, or of course, sports events like your Vikings, Gophers, Twins, Wild, Timberwolves, you name it, they've got it. And I'll be honest with you, I love on the app that you can toggle all in pricing, and then you can find out from the beginning of the transaction how much you're going to be paying. None of that bait and switch on the back end where it says you're paying 20. And then at the end of the transaction, somehow the number's $40 because of convenience fees. I don't know who those are convenient for, but no, not here, not on Gametime. I absolutely love it for that. Also, too, panoramic seat views. You can get a great view of what you're going to be seeing in front of you, whether it's a stage, a ball field, you name it. They'll show you what the view is going to look like so that you do not go into an event with no idea what it's going to look like from where you're sitting. And you get the lowest price guarantee, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. So if you find that ticket cheaper elsewhere, they're going to take care of you and give you a little extra besides. And your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the game today. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets with Gametime, but terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB, and you'll get $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, we're talking to Gregg Masterson, and sometime this week on The Athletic, John Bowden, or as we probably call him, Ralph, yes, I think I heard you say that, did a list called MLB Hot Stove Matchmaking, and it was, I don't know if it was like going into the winter meetings or what exactly, but it was one free agent fit for every team. And it's kind of funny. I got to the M's and I saw Caleb Ferguson, 1 year, $6 million. I was like, oh, look, thank goodness, Miami. And Tomoyuki Shigano. I was like, okay, Milwaukee. So I get to the Twins. Jurickson Profar, 3 years, $39 million. Now, we had discussed this off the air, and my initial inclination was like, oh, I really don't like that. I don't know if I'd give 3 years to that guy. I don't like that he's an every other year wonder versus, just kind of a mess. But the more I kind of dug into it, the more I kind of dug it. And I think I'm not going to go over all the pros ahead of time, but one that I think could be slept on that should be noted is he played first base and left field this last year. Now, you had said you weren't sure if he could play second anymore. He's definitely not shortstop. He probably isn't playing much anywhere else because of, he's past 30 now. He's still surprisingly young, but past 30. And then again, it's kind of like, well, did they need him to play any of those positions? The Padres were pretty well set at some of them. So with that said, assuming he was only going to play first or left field, that's a pretty good fit for the Twins because they don't have a strong answer at first base. And so if you really want to lean into Wallner in one corner and Larnach in the other, you can tuck him over at first base. You can start him against right or lefties in either corner. Probably left, I suppose, more likely than right. But with that said, you also have some right-handed help at first base in the form of Jose Miranda. So a lot of different options there. I think his versatility plays up. Initially, I was like, ugh, I don't like it, but it's growing on me. What do you think?
I mean, I like just putting it out there. I was banging the table for Jurickson Profar before both 2023 and 2024. His 2023 and 2024 were both kind of all over the place. Mm-hmm. But I've been a Jurickson Profar guy for a while. Did you know that his middle name is Bartholomeus? Amazing middle name.
The more you know, man. I know, like Prince Fielder's middle name is Semien, like Marcus Semien. I know Torrey's middle name is like Kadar, and I know that Scott Baker's middle name is Scott because his real name is Timothy Scott Baker. But I did not know that Jurickson Jurickson Profar had that for a middle name. That's incredible for the Curacao native, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, Curacao. So I do think he would be a much better fit for the Twins if he did have second base in his bag anymore. He hasn't played second base since 2021, even though he was a pretty consistent second baseman for a couple years there. Yeah. He'd never graded out super well at second base. It was always kind of an adventure. But yeah, I mean, if we are just ignoring the money and the payroll sized elephant in the room, right. If we're ignoring that, I wouldn't hate Jurickson Profar on this deal. 3 years, $13 million. He is 32 years old, so there's a little bit of a tummy ache, and he's been kind of all over the board. He really has not played well outside of his time in San Diego. I don't know if they have his special sauce or something there, but in a normal offseason, I would be totally open to Jurickson Profar being a fit. They do need somebody who can hit left-handed pitching and play in the corner outfield. First base is a question mark. Second base is kind of a question mark. I talked about that on last show. And so if he could play second base, yeah. But I think it all comes back to the payroll, that whole thing. But I would be open to it if the money was right.
And there's a couple things that are, they'll stick in your craw with that. You would probably almost certainly have to move Christian Vasquez. You'd probably have to move Chris Paddock. Yep. And you'd probably have to move Willie Castro. No, the other guy said Chris. You might have to move Willie Castro. And to me, is he that much better than Willie Castro? And maybe he is. He had a 92 OPS plus going into last year. He has a 98 now. Now, that's not something that's going to disqualify a guy from improving. Marcus Semien was, when he signed his huge mega deal after that 1 year kind of pillow deal, his career numbers still didn't really match up. He'd had a big year when the rabbit ball was out, and then he had a down year in, I think, 2020, where his 2020 looked weird because it was a small sample, and that is hard to analyze. And so it was like, oh, this guy's older than you think. How's he going to age? You don't need him at shortstop after you signed Seager. So it was just kind of a weird mix of things. But I do see a little bit there in a Semien sense of like, yeah, maybe after 30, he's found out a couple things about what does and doesn't work for him. The stats, I mean, no matter if you are a traditionalist or, more of a sabermetric type, he hit 300 against lefties, 280, 380, 459 overall for his slash. I'm going to be honest with you. When there's 100-point difference between batting average and on-base percentage, I just get like all excited and like goosebumps because I love me a guy who takes walks.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that he has a fairly kind of complete package. If he's on, and that's kind of always going to be the question with Profar is if he's on. And I know that Bowden, the contract that he threw out there was a 3-year contract. I would be surprised if the Twins signed anybody to a 3-year contract this summer. And that would take Profar until he's 35 or 32, 33, 34, would take him through his 34 season.
It's not horrible.
Yeah, no, but he also is very, he's been pretty durable over the last few years. Basically,
that wasn't true for a long time either. Like he had a long stretch where he got hurt a lot.
He's been pretty active if you go back through like, I don't know, his age 25 seasons till now. So since 2018, he's basically been an everyday player with a few exceptions. In 2023, he was miserable. And so there was some lost playing time that way. But I mean, last year he played 158 games. The 2022 he played 152. Like he could be a legit kind of everyday player at a couple different positions if the money is right. If the Twins feel confidence that he's going to not be the most inconsistent player in baseball, I'm open to it.
Got hit by 18 pitches last year. Twins love that too. That's probably a big reason why his OBP
That's probably part of it. Yeah.
380. Yeah. 18 after the previous, let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4 years combined, he had 20. So I don't know. He must have said something that the NL West didn't like. So
worked for Willie Castro this year.
Yeah, exactly. 3 years, 39 it's pretty similar to what Lourdes Gurriel got from the Diamondbacks, 342. Similar type-ish players. Obviously, Gurriel not playing on the dirt, but I suppose he could get a first base mitt if you really asked him to. It's just Diamondbacks haven't done that. But I look at Profar as a Gurriel type player with a little less defense. Not that Gurriel has that much defense to begin with, but a little better on base skills. I mean, if I were to choose, I'd probably choose on base skills, just personal preference.
I will say Profar is a bad left fielder. Like he's not a good left field. Like
that's not been a disqualifier for the Twins in the past. Now again,
no, it has not. But I just want to put that out there. That it's not just that like he doesn't have great. Like he's been a below average left fielder. You're not getting a glove if Profar is your guy. If Profar is your big guy this offseason, you're not bringing in a glove. He hasn't looked terrible at first base, but yeah.
Oh, well, it's incredibly easy. Tell him, Greg.
It's incredibly hard. Or damn.
All right,
is that how it goes? I don't remember.
I don't remember. Yeah, good movie. All right, let's say our last break, and then there was a controversy with WFAN on Friday night, late Friday night. The definition of a Friday news dump that I want to dig into because it's old guard versus new guard for the media, and I've got some takes. So just a moment. Makes sense if you hit the right button. Well, we got to show some love for our friends over at FanDuel. You can get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if that $5 bet hits. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page you place your bets. It's like having the red zone in your back pocket. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet hits. You got to check it out, FanDuel.com. That FanDuel app. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Yeah, a little embarrassing. This new stand-up routine that I'm doing, not comedy, but podcasting, and I just missed one of the buttons up. So that's why
I thought it was funny.
Say it again.
I thought it was funny.
Yeah. Well, any ground we didn't cover with Profar before we dive into McPherson versus Heyman? I feel like, he can hit lefties, and just a switch hitter in general is helpful. Do you like him that much more than Willie Castro?
I mean, I think that he's a completely different player than Willie Castro.
But I mean, I think you have to get rid of Willie to get him to make the puzzle piece fit.
I don't think that I would, unless Willie Castro is being traded for something like substantial in return. I don't think that I would take Profar over Castro.
Maybe Paddock and Vasquez leaving would be enough money saved. Maybe that's
it's a possibility depending on what it would like. If you were able to have Profar and Castro on the same team, you probably would have almost no money to spend anywhere else, even like a $1.5 million contract somewhere.
It's so dumb that we're saying these things.
I know.
So dumb.
But there are worse ways that I think that the offseason can feasibly play out than having Profar come in and no other additions.
Yeah. I personally think I would trade for Eric Fetty, clear a little bit of money, maybe sign a reliever or a catcher. I like Yasmani Grandal. I don't know if he's the best fit, but we'll see. But yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at. I feel like until they actually do something, we're just kind of hoping against hope that anything we say might turn into something. You know what I mean? Like they still do such like off the wall stuff that you could kind of just throw out, I think they're going to trade for, there's a Ryan Feltner, a guy I like on the Rockies. And like, that's as likely as them signing a free agent that you've ever heard of. So
Feltner's the one. Is he the one that got his face busted about a year ago?
I'm not positive. I've always liked Herman Marquez. Before that, I liked John Gray. Before that, I liked Kyler Anderson. Or maybe that was after that. But I've always Ulysse Chassin. I've always had a Rockies pitcher that I irrationally think could be better elsewhere. I do think Cal Quantrill maybe fits into that, and that I could see that being a fit for the Twins. But again, doesn't really scratch the itch of you don't need another number 4 starter. But I don't know. I mean, come on. I don't know.
Okay, I do want to start really quick. It is Ryan Feltner. He took a comebacker off the nose about in the 2023 season. I was actually at that game. I watched it happen. I heard his face break from the outfield. It was a mess. So I'm glad that he's still kicking around.
When that would happen if that were to happen to me, the back of my head, like fear of that happening again. I know you have to not have that fear to be a professional, but I don't know, man. When it happened to Chris Bassett too, I'm like, how does a guy come back from that? And then, he comes back. He does exactly that. And that's just why those guys make the big bucks. And I'm here talking about it. So late Friday night, late for a person like me. Jon Heyman was on WFAN in New York, and Keith McPherson, who I believe is a very talented young man. So I don't want that to get shrouded or off. I don't want that to not be part of what I say, like an understanding. But has Jon Heyman on and makes a jab about Arson Judge, the tweet from 2 years ago. Was it 2 years ago? Yeah, it has to be 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Or is it 1 year ago?
It was 2 years ago, yesterday.
Okay. And so made a jab about Arson Judge, makes a jab about, are you on the payroll with Boris Corp? And then as Heyman gets off the air, he says he's never going on WFAN again. And then I can't believe it. He kind of something that we're going to have a lot of fun with in the years. I can't believe it's not butter or some dumb thing like that. It's going to be a meme for sure. What were your thoughts of that? Because obviously I've been not in Jon Heyman's shoes, but I've been near his shoes. Like I've been in the clubhouse on a daily basis. I actually was in the same clubhouse as Jon Heyman one time in Milwaukee, which I found was strange. He was talking to that day's starting pitcher, which is not allowed. Like it's an unwritten rule that everybody knows. And it was Jake Odorizzi that day. Jake's a great dude, but I don't know what the heck Heyman was thinking that day, but I remember just thinking like, whatever, let him do his thing. And so anyway, I understand, as a trained journalist, I did J school. I've gone through the motions. I have a pretty good idea of the ethics and the do's and don'ts of sports journalism. And when I watched that, it was chopped in a way where you thought that, Heyman was kind of being sensitive. But when I got bigger picture, context, I don't think this looks good for Keith.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm coming at it from I did not go to journalism school. I write like a blog a week if I'm lucky. I'm not a writer or a reporter or anything like that, and I have a lot of respect for the people who are. When I heard the initial kind of I'll just call it a meltdown, I guess. Mm-hmm. It sounded a lot of it was directed toward the Arson Judge thing. But then you heard him say something like, and to insinuate blah, 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 I'm taking cuts or whatever it was. My ears kind of perked up and I was like, okay, actually, I think I need to listen to what happened before this, because that line, I was like, oh, is this more than, because I feel, I don't know. I like to crack a joke. If I were to ever interview Jon Heyman, I might give him some polite crap after, several good questions. I'm like, oh, you remember Arson Judge? Like I could see myself doing something like that. Yeah. And I think that the Arson Judge crack is, a little bit, like that kind of comes with the territory. It's, you can maybe pull that off if you're building a good rapport with the guy. But are you taking money from Boris Corp? I think he might have, I can't remember exactly how he said it, so I don't want to misquote him, but the way that he said it was like, oh my gosh, and Heyman rolled with it, he kind of brushed it off. And I think that the second crack about arson judge really kind of finished it for him. When he's like, okay, well, what is this joke? Why am I subjecting myself to this? I get it. I think that the meltdown was a little embarrassing, and his behavior on Twitter was just, stepping on a rake. But I get it, man. Like that's a really serious accusation, even if it was in jest. And it's something that he's been hearing a long time, I'm sure, online and whatnot. So to actually ask him that, not necessarily in person, but like face to face or voice to voice or whatever, that's not great.
No, it's bad ethics to ask people or insinuate people are taking money under the table in any industry. I mean, Joe Smith with the Timberwolves, any sort of industry. We could talk about the healthcare industry. We probably shouldn't do that. But like any insinuation that someone's taking money under the table is very bad. And I know we're in an era where like cracking jokes online is very commonplace, very normalized. And honestly, you partake in it, I partake in it. It's not in the public sphere, one of the largest radio stations in the country, or the most listened to, I would have to imagine. And it's, they don't have that rapport. It's not like I'm messing with one of my guys, we're not at the bar. We're not in the tweets. We're not doing the whole, oh, he's on the take, wink, wink. And so the people that are like caping for Keith in this instance are like, no, we've thought that all along. It's like, yes, but you don't say it out loud. And you first of all, you're making unproven claims that may or may not be true, but that's slander, right? It's libel, slander. I remember which is which. And it doesn't seem that bad, but I'm like, do you have to be beat over the head with comedy like Family Guy to realize that you questioned a man's ethics? And like that, in that industry, all you have is your word, your ethics, your work. And if someone is cutting that down, not the least of which a young guy who's not been in the industry that long, I even have here, not part of the old guard. Now that's not gatekeeping, but it's stating facts. He's still new to the territory. He has been more of a like video, John Boy Media, MLB Network TV stuff. In fact, they both have MLB Network TV ties, which again adds complications to it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. You don't have to be old media to understand that accusing someone of their ethics being bad isn't a good look for you no matter what. And then you add to the fact that, Heyman is an old school journalist. He wants to do things the old way. I don't know. I just think the people who are backing Keith on this are 100% in the wrong.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that there is time for joking, and you can obviously, like you kind of reference, you can go a little bit further online with that. Those things don't, I guess, matter as much. But when the joke is literally like you are a fraud, I mean, because that's basically what it is, and it's not
the first thing you say.
Like it's not something like I could almost see it like if there were no rumors or any discussions online about, oh, Jon Heyman is in the pocket of Scott Boras, and if it was just like some outrageous statement like how much do you pay athletes to get an interview? I know you've been paying athletes. It's like, oh, like I think that's even a different level below.
He even said a percentage figure too. He goes, isn't it 0.01%? Like, again, throwaway comment, but like putting number to it is just another twist of the knife.
So, I don't know. Like that's something that even like as somebody who is not part of that class, I know a little bit. Sometimes I think that, journalists are a little bit, huffing their own, Stuffy. Yeah. Like, I think that some of the, like, a lot of the rules that journalists like hold them to are just like, okay, come on. Like when like Tom Verducci shows up places and bees Tom Verducci, it's kind of like, okay, dude, what are you doing? Like, I can laugh at that. I don't like
derby hat,
but I also get why it matters to them. And if that's your livelihood and you are like one of the top baseball journalists in the game, like you fought for decades and you jump on a radio call and somebody asks you whether you are you are taking money under the table for something. And it's like, I actually don't have to put up with this. Like, I don't have to be the nice guy about this. And he did kind of play it off. He kind of joked about it, but it was almost like the arson judge thing is like, okay, you know what? Never mind. I give up. I don't need to entertain you anymore. I'm out.
Well,
and I get it.
If you were to have Aaron Judge on your show and the first thing you bring up is the drop in the World Series, or like, God rest his soul, Bill Buckner, and the first thing you talk about is for 10 minutes his misplay in the 86 World Series. Like, imagine talking about that two and a half times over and then being like, okay, let's get serious. Why would you hang around for that? If people say, oh, Jon Heyman is not as respectable as Aaron Judge. Well, if you think Jon Heyman is a clown and a schmuck, why did you have him on your show in the first place?
I mean, unless, I don't know. I haven't listened to the whole thing, unless the whole thing was just like that 6 minutes, in which case, that's a rough look. That is a rough look.
Yeah. I don't know. I just, it doesn't sit well with me. Well, hey, we kind of had an artist in residency with you, which has been kind of fun. Why don't we close it with, I finally think we can get to what the heck a golden batter is. People have been talking about it for a while. It actually came out quite a long time ago and then got more traction this last week when I think Jason Stark started talking about it. But the idea of every team can use one batter in one spot after the 7th inning, is that pretty close to what you're understanding?
Honestly, I have not looked too much into it, so I don't know exactly the specifics, but that sounds close enough.
This feels to me like the one time you and I would be in lockstep with Jeff Fry and like being ticked about the game being turned into a mockery, because he's are you still blocked?
Yes, I am still blocked, but I get to see him all. Thanks, Elon.
For him, all 5'6", he doesn't get to block too many people with that height. So no, I'm kidding. The only reason I'm better with him is because he made fun of my face. So
it's one of his favorite.
Yeah, I had him on my old show, and he was great, and he loved Greg Olson, and I got along with him. I have a lot of respect for the old guard of the game. I grew up. First year I watched was 1993, so I will go back and watch old games from that era, and it's a different game, and it's still fun, still enjoyable. If I'm sitting in my office working, I'll turn on YouTube, and there's a Twins Mariners game from 1993 that I'll watch a lot. I have Scott Erickson's no-hitter saved around here somewhere, and I'll watch that from 94. I appreciate that era. The game's going to change. The game changed to get to where it was in 1993. It's going to change. The future is now, old man, like Dewey from Malcolm in the Middle says. Is that what the future is now, old man?
The future is now, old man. No, I love that era of baseball as well. I love players like Jeff Fry. That is honestly probably second to just a big dude who dings dongs. I love just the scrappy, doesn't really do a ton of stuff really well. And not in I love Nick Punto, but I just get a kick out of that player type. Mm-hmm. So if and I've said it before, I would not have harassed Jeff Fry to the extent that I did if I didn't find some genuine value in him. I will not engage with people I don't really find value in. And I actually enjoy Jeff Fry. He takes it a little bit too far quite often. I will say he tried to pull the make fun of my face to me, who has never shown my face. I don't know if you remember seeing that, but he did the classic, who's this, who's talking, and then zoom in on your profile picture. And it's just a painting of Diogenes the Cynic, and I'm like, dude, is that your only move?
Yeah, dude's out here telegraphing. He's looking at his first read and he's locking in and not coming off that, which is funny. Yeah, no, he does have some good valid points, and then he has some other points. So that's going to be it for this episode. We ran long again, but not quite as long as last time. Great time though. Enjoyed spending time with you, Greg. Hopefully this holiday season is good to you. Is it cold where you are?
It is cold. So hoping for a white Christmas.
Oh my goodness. I didn't realize it's 48 here in Minnesota today. So it's actually not that bad. We've had it pretty nasty for the last week or so, but anyway, fun off-season talk, Jurickson Profar to the Twins. I don't see it, but I wouldn't hate it if they can make the money work. And, Team Heyman. I don't think I've ever thought I would say that, but he's Gregg Masterson.
How much is he paying you?
Yeah, I used to get asked that about the poll ads, and I'm like, I have had one poll ad ever say one word to me. No, maybe not true anymore, because I did talk to Joe very briefly years ago. But at Joe Mauer's retirement press conference, I walked in at the same time as Jim Poll, and he goes, "Hi, Brandon," and that was literally the extent of my poll ad interaction, and I was not even aware he knew my name. So, yeah, if I'm on the payroll, boy, they're not doing a good job of keeping track of their employees. But that's for another day. Like I said, he's Gregg Masterson. Follow him on the tweets at GREGGT Masterson. I'm Brandon Warren, and you can unfollow me at Brandon_Warren. And this has been Locked On Twins, and we'll see ya
tomorrow night.
Good work, champ.
Thanks. Whammy.